So welcome. Thank you for joining me. My name is Vincci and it's really lovely to be able to share with you today a very immune boosting yin practice. So yin yoga is very much slower, very much meditative based practice. And so if you're brand new to yin, welcome. It's going to be a really nice yummy session where we will be going through a couple of poses where it's designed to get into more the lower body today. So getting into the hip joint, our knees, our lower back. And the idea is to physically open up through maybe some tight spots from maybe sitting for too long, especially if you've been working from home. I totally understand you're probably feeling quite stiff. So this would be probably a very nice break to free up any stiffness in the lower body. And also it's very much using props to support us to go into these positions. So we will find this practice in a way that is best for you. So before we begin, make sure you find a comfortable spot in the house, somewhere where you won't be disturbed for the next 20 minutes to half an hour. And grab some props now if you can. If you've done the yin practice before, as you know, there's very handy to have some blocks and bolsters. But I know that not all of us have all those things at home. So if you don't have a block, for example, I'd say grab a lunchbox, something you can find in the kitchen. Most homes, if you don't have a thick book, if you have a thick book, you can use that too, but lunchbox can also be good. Just be mindful that you're not going to lean too much weight on it, so it doesn't have to be super thick or sturdy, but just something that resembles the height and the size of a block. Okay, so if you don't have a bolster, that's okay. Grab a big towel if you can, or some maybe a big pillow at home. You can wrap a towel around that too. And I always say grab some extra towels or blankets for kneeling, especially in some classes and in some poses that we're doing today. It might be good to support your knees, especially if you're on the half floor like I do. Now, if you don't have a strap, that's fine. Grab maybe a belt if you have a belt, or if you have or can get to a tie or your partner's ties, and you can maybe use that. Okay. So let's start by just grabbing all your props first, lay it all kind of close to you. Now, before I begin too, if you've got any injuries, anything concerned today, if there's any areas you're aware of, you know that are probably delicate or in a bit of discomfort right now, make sure you please be mindful. I'll talk about exploring that edge where you're starting to kind of find maybe a little bit of dull achiness in the fascia area, the connective tissue area, or in the joint side, but it should never be a very sharp, sudden, acute pain. So if you do experience that, please make sure you come out of the pose, and I'll offer a couple of modifications because I won't be able to interact with you face to face in that way. I'll do my best to offer some modifications. Now, let's begin to find a comfortable seat. You can sit any position that is most comfortable. We'll be here for a few minutes to arrive. So you can sit down in with a cross-legged position, in legs in front. You can decide what feels best. So as we find our seat now, let's begin to sit in a way that's comfortable. Now, if you find sitting cross-legged like this is not comfortable, you might be hurting the lower back, you're always welcome to sit with knees bent on a pillow or cushion, kind of like a straddle position. Okay, so if you prefer that, that's another option there. Now, let's begin to find that seat. We call it arriving on our mats. And as you find that position, make sure you're comfortable, you're warm. Let's start by closing our eyes down. Hands can rest on your lap. And just give yourself a few moments to let the sit bones ground down. Whether it's on your props or on the floor, let the lower body to settle. Become aware of the parts of yourself in contact with the earth. Begin to find length in the spine. Let the tailbone settle to the earth as you find length all the way to the crown of the head. Finding that back support. And checking in to see if the shoulders feel they stiffen up. Maybe just let it settle down a little. Begin to now bring your awareness to your breath. As we start to become aware of the inhalation, perhaps even begin to notice the quality of the breath here today. Most of the time we're not aware of our breath because perhaps our mind is so busy or physically our bodies are busy. So yin is a really lovely practice for us to come back to the simple idea of observing our breath. And it sounds simple, even though I'm saying the word simple, it's actually can be quite challenging at times, especially if you tend to like to multitask or if you like to always be doing something. The yin practice can bring different challenges for some of us. That could be a mental challenge of having to be able to sit still and be with your thoughts, and even to slow down and listen to the breath. Noticing the out-breath as it comes away from the body. Observing and watching. And this takes practice. It's not something that can easily come to some of us, especially if we like to do or like to think a lot. So it's really about practicing letting go of those habits. And if there is a lot of thoughts coming, going, that's okay, because we're just watching ourselves now. We're trying to also let go of the inner dialogue and the judgments. And so in our practice today, you're going to probably experience that ongoing train of thought. It's like a movie reel. You can see things play out. Being able to gently guide your awareness back to the breath each time, that's part of the yin yoga practice. That mental ability to stay present, not let that movie reel keep playing and drift us off. And in the next few moments, I'd like to invite you to take a few clearing rounds. And the idea here is to perhaps find the best way to release the things you may have been holding, whether it's physical tension or even a lot of thoughts, things, especially in this time where there's a lot of uncertainty, we don't really know what's going on, we feel there's a lot of anxiety and worry and concern. It's a very, very normal feeling. And so let's now begin to take a deep breath into the bowl now with the sound of the bowl. Empty it out. Deep breath in. Let it go. One last round. Fill it up. And empty completely. Let yourself release the things you've been holding. Allowing the tension to melt away. And in your own time, you may find this practice of guiding the awareness back to the breath throughout the yin poses may be helpful here. And so we'll start to come off our seat now when you're ready. And as you come off the seat, just have all your props close by. It's always helpful, just so you know that everything is there. And we'll begin now to come into our first pose to get into the lower back. So that's kind of the kidney channel area. It's really good, especially if you've been sitting all day. It's just to start to release some of that stiffness into that you maybe built up in the lower back, both within the joint site, around the lower back and the lumbar spine, as well as the connective tissue of the lower back. So let's start by lying on our bellies. If you like, you can always take a towel or blanket underneath you. And depending if your floor's hard, you might even want to take a thin cushion. So as you start to lie down, start with coming onto your hands and your forearms. So you can check with your shoulder distance, and right in front of your shoulders should be your hands. So really start with kind of shoulder distance, but you can always change that up if you need to. Now feet, as long as your lower back isn't going through any kind of injury at the moment, you can start with the feet hip distance, and even just let your legs relax, so you can just kind of make sure that it's not tense. Now, however, if you do have experiencing any sciatica, any lower back injuries at the moment, check in with your glutes. So maybe just gently engage the glute area, the bum cheeks, okay? So that kind of helps to protect lower back. And you can grab maybe your lunchbox or even your block. Now you can take that towards the front of your mat where your hands are. This is going to support your upper body. So let's start with taking our Sphinx pose. So this is really about coming onto the belly, but coming up a little bit higher so you get that natural curve into the lower back. So as you can see, I'm in my Sphinx pose and I have got that kind of slight curve into lower back. Now, if you feel this is a really comfortable height for you, and how you can kind of gauge with each pose is checking with the breath. If you feel you can breathe very comfortably and you're starting to kind of feel there's that kind of slight compression into lower back, but nothing too uncomfortable, then you can either stay here. Those of you who are happy in this way, you can start to see if you can find position for your head and your shoulders that you can relax. So it could be drawing the chin to the chest. You could even take a tripod shape with your hands and just use your hands to support your head. You can even take your lunchbox, your block, to support you. Okay, you can always change that height to make sure it's suitable. The idea is to let the shoulders to relax and not to let your neck feel like it's straining. So most of us may find if our neck is really tight, it's always good to have some support. And when you get to this place, knowing that you can stay in this pose for the next 2 to 3 minutes. Every pose is designed to be held for a certain amount of time, usually at least 3 minutes for the muscles to start to relax. And how we can help do that is to come back to our breath. So once you settle here, it's always good to once again watch and observe the breath. Watching the breath coming in, coming out. And a couple of ways to also help is to start to see if you like to count the breath. So you might like to inhale for 1, exhale 1, inhale 2, exhale 2, and so on. If you do lose the count, that's okay, because the mind will drift off. We call that the monkey mind. It's very busy, it's very distracted, it's very normal. You might see if you like to guide the awareness gently back into counting. Inhale 1 again and keep counting. And it might lose its attention, but that's okay. And then just starting to really allow the upper body or any tension areas to soften. You might even like to invite the breath to that place. Could be in the lower back, could be elsewhere in the body. And in the traditional Chinese medicine theory, we also want to stimulate the kidney space, the kidney channel here. And it's the seat of fear. If we do feel things are out of balance within that channel, we can tend to feel an overwhelming sense of fear, which is going to be quite natural at this moment in time in our world. The fear of the uncertainty, of the fear of the unknown, for our own health and safety, and for our own family's health and well-being. And see if you can even incorporate within this pose any sort of concerns or worries, to see if you can let that soften and melt away with a few more breaths. And to ask yourself, How does it serve me to hold on to these feelings? And does it serve me? And if it does not, perhaps it's time to let that go. And so we'll be here for another minute or so, whether you like to close your eyes and continue practicing the breathing techniques, or even cultivating letting go of those fears and concerns. And as you practice more and more of yin yoga with this meditative element, finding the technique that's best for you, they are great tools for life. I feel that in many times of uncertainty, I find I gravitate towards these breath and even meditative or visualization practices to really kind of keep me sane. I don't know what I'd do without yoga. And so as you take these last few rounds of breaths in your Sphinx pose, you're welcome to slowly come down from your Sphinx pose, and it might be helpful just to take a few moments to stack your hands on top of each other underneath your forehead so you can keep the spine neutral now. So you've been here for a couple of minutes, so you might find it's helpful just to let the spine stay long and neutral now. Sometimes we can feel some sensations straight away. Sometimes it's just nice to let the connective tissues to rehydrate. Now for the next few moments, if you like to release anything, you might want to bend the knees and windscreen wipe side to side, left and right. And some of us may find it useful to even take into child's pose. It might be nice to slowly round the spine to counterpose that back bend we did. So you're always welcome to take the child's pose of your choice as another option. And between each yoga yin yoga pose, we may find that rest pose is just a really nice way to find that feedback. I feel the rest pose is just as important as the yin holds themselves, because it's a really valuable time for us to reflect mentally, emotionally. Sometimes we actually can get very triggered from each pose, and also for our connective tissues to rehydrate as synovial fluid floods through back into the joint side. So whichever rest pose you've come out from, slowly come back up into sitting. And for the next one, it's going to be really great for our immunity boosting. It's not guaranteed to make you super immune, but it's going to be stimulating your stomach and your spleen channels. And so our stomach and spleen channels in relation to Chinese medicine theory is around the outer thigh area. And so you're going to start to probably feel after this pose sometimes some strong reactions, because it is quite a strong pose. And so this time when you're ready, let's start by seeing if you can take either your blanket or a cushion to kneel on. Now we're going to start with kneeling on the left side, okay? So you can take the blanket or your towel from your left knee all the way to your ankle if you want some ankle support. Okay, so I'm just going to start with cushioning my left knee because I'm on a hard floor. Now grab at least one block or lunch box. You might want to take two things. I'm just going to use my props here today. Now let's step the right foot in front as if you're coming to a low lunge. Now, it does not have to be this perfect alignment base. So in yin practice, we tend to not focus so much on that. So let's bring our right foot in front. Let the block, at least you can balance on both height. The idea is in the dragon pose, you want to start to find a way that you can feel supported with the props. Now, you can always take a bolster too if you want. Now what we're going to do is tuck our left toes and take our left knee back just a little bit. Now, some of you may already start to feel that in your left hip flexor, which is great because that's where we want to get into on that left side. Now, that's enough. Stay in this position. Higher up is usually less intense, lower, more intense. And that's because it's going to be more weight coming towards your left side, and also depend how your left knee is, okay? So if it's too much on that left knee, you've got any injuries, stay up higher, okay? Some of you now may want to also add a little bit more to the pose. You can walk that right foot out. You can come onto the knife's edge of the foot. I'm just going to reposition myself so that you can actually see what I'm doing with my foot. So when you look into the right foot, you can come onto the knife's edge. You can just walk it out. Some of you might walk out the right foot all the way out. It's off your mat onto the floor, and that's okay. Okay, so when you get to this place, just see how you go on that the right foot. You might feel it into the right groin, and that's okay as long as it's not hurting. So there's a lot of things happening. For some of us, this is already quite strong, so just make sure if you need to, walk that right foot back in if you need to. Just focus on that left hip flexor. So this is where we can start to see, how is our breath? Does it feel it's labored? Does it feel like we're clenching our face? Are we tensing completely? If you can start to relax the upper body where you can, whether it's in the face, the shoulders, whether you like to close your eyes and find your breath pattern here. And so once you settle into your dragon pose, some of us may stay higher up, some of us stay lower down. You can always use some blankets or cushions or pillows even if you want to go a little bit lower. But remembering lower means more intensity. This is where we talk about the edge. This is where we've got to think about our appropriate edge. And in every yin pose, there will be a different edge. You can be in the same pose on a different side, and we'll explore that a little bit later on the other side because that edge will be different. Some days it's 50%, some days it's 80%. But to know to practice intelligently, not to risk injury, that takes more intelligence, more courage than just forcing your way into it. Find your breath, and your breath is your best guide here to let you know, have I gone beyond my edge? And if the breath is really labored, really short and sharp, you may need to back off a little bit, pull back, perhaps come up a little bit higher or walk that right foot back into the midline. Going completely intense is not always the answer, and it may be perhaps the very last thing you should do, especially if you've got any injuries. So let your breath be your guide. Listen to the breath. When you feel, you can start to count the breath or even letting go of some of the things you feel you're holding. Last few rounds of breaths, letting some of those tension areas to soften. And I'm sure dragon pose brings out a lot for us. It's quite a strong pose, so take as much time as you need when you're ready to come out. Now, for some of us, it might be walking the right foot back in first. You might want to even just stretch out that right leg if that's helpful. Some of us may find walking it out in a down dog might be nice just to release, because it's quite a strong pose in a way. There's a lot of stiffness built up, and also that synovial fluid flood back. So I'll leave it with you if you want to take a short little rest before going to the other side. But when you're ready, I'll start to begin to show you, guide you through the second side. So now we're going to be kneeling on our right side. So make sure you prop yourself up. Some of us may have an injury on that right side. So make sure you take any props you need to cushion that right knee and right ankle as well. And here, stepping the left foot in front. Now you can start with tucking the right toes, take that right knee back a bit, see how that feels on that right hip flexor. Some of us may find more intense, some of us less intense. So you just start to kind of gauge slowly, bit by bit, what feels right. It could be staying with the left foot as it is. If you want to walk that left foot out, whether it's coming onto the knife's edge, You can take the left hand onto the left inner thigh. You might want to just say, no thanks, I'll stay up just right where I was. It's completely fine. So you decide. And for me, my goodness, my right inner thigh and groin is quite strong and quite tight there today. So I'm not going to go as far. I'm going to pull back. Okay, so from here, this is the time when you can gauge within your appropriate edge. Perhaps let the breath be that guide. Listen into the breath, and as you settle in, take a few moments here to find your breath. And the more we practice, our mind, our body is going to settle into each pose a little bit quicker each time. But in saying that too, some days it can be very challenging. Some poses perhaps we may have experienced quite perhaps a very comfortable position in one practice. The following practice, it can feel very challenging. So this is why I love Yin. We always find a different experience each time. So as you listen into the breath, find out if the mind is wandered off. If it has, that's okay. Guide it back to counting the breath. And perhaps if there's been any overwhelming concerns or worries for you, to know that you're human, to know that this is all a very natural reaction, all the different processes you've been feeling. And to give yourself that permission and space to not only let yourself feel it and be okay that it's okay to feel all these things, and to see if you're ready to let some of that go. And a lot of the time we can experience some surprising memories and emotions in these poses because it does get into certain areas, certain energetic points in our body that we didn't realize we've been holding. It's been stagnant and things has been blockages. Whether we're ready to let it go or not, sometimes things will rise and bubble up to the surface. And in your own time, from where you are, if you're ready to come out, perhaps you might want to walk that left foot back into the middle. If you want to stretch out the back of that left leg, it might feel nice to do that. If you want as an option, you can always walk it out if that feels nice. And as a rest pose option, you're welcome to lie on your back, or you can even come into child's pose. It's up to you what you choose to go with. Some of us may find, even just like our yin holds, we might intuitively know which rest pose to go with. So I would like to invite you to take the position that works best and give yourself this time to start to notice the feedback. Each time we come into rest pose, the feedback can come in such various ways. It can be a physical sensation. We can even feel the circulation in our body, sometimes tingles. There are times where it's just completely natural to feel a stirring of emotions. Sometimes it can come very intensely, and sometimes it's very much a subtle layer. Just to let yourself feel those things. And in your own time, let's come out of our rest pose. And we're going to just come into a short hold now. This one is not going to be as long. It's very much getting into the lower back and into the hips as well. So let's come to lie on our backs, everyone. You can take maybe something to support your head, whether it's a pillow. Now, some of you, if you have a towel or a bolster, you can place that towards the end of your mat. Our feet is actually going to rest on this, okay? Now, so let's start by bringing the feet onto the bolster, okay? And we're going to have our feet hip width apart. You can go wider if you want. Arms out, shoulder height. So we're going to come into simple windscreen wipers, twisting one side to the other. You can start with maybe just moving side to side to begin with first, just to release your lower back. And we will start with bring our knees to the right side of the room. Now, if you feel this is nice, you're welcome to stay this way. You can even take the right ankle onto the left thigh, go a little bit further, and you can look in any direction. And let's take a deep breath here. Let it go. Now, some of you might find if you want to explore more, you can go without the bolster and just see if that feels nicer. That's a little bit more intense, so if your knee is not liking it or your hip, left side especially, then just leave that right foot back onto the floor, okay? So the idea here is to get into that left hip flexor, lower back, all the way to the left side of the body. Then we'll slowly bring it back. Let's take it to the other side with or without bolster. And as you take it to the other side, you might feel a different sensation. So I know already my right side is tighter. So I might decide not to bring my left ankle onto my left on my right thigh. Yep, that's way too intense for me. So I'm going to place it down, but you choose. Taking your gaze to any direction that's comfortable. Take a deep breath here. Let it go. Now, depending on your time permitting, if you want to stay longer in each side, you're totally welcome to. I know some of us may have other things to go back to. So if you're ready to come into your Shavasana, this is pretty much my favorite part of every practice. It's wonderful to be able to rest and receive. So set yourself up. Some of you might like a bolster underneath your knees. If you want to layer up or if you're feeling a bit cold, you're welcome to grab a blanket or even grab a jumper. Feel free to lie on your back now. Now, some of you may like, instead of lying on your back, always offer the option of legs up against the wall. And if you do have some wall space, you're welcome to try that as an option. It's just a lovely way to let the circulation flow the opposite way. So if you know you like to be here for at least the next 5 minutes or even more, then you can choose that option. So let's find our beautiful rest position, Shavasana. Give yourself this time to make sure you're warm and comfortable now. And as you start to close down the eyes, let your eyes rest now. To be able to now find a comfortable position to let your arms relax, let your legs feel heavy, sensing the parts of yourself in contact with the earth. Let it hold you. Adding any last minute adjustments, perhaps if there's stiffness in the face, adding a yawn. Allowing yourself to completely surrender. Letting the earth hold you. Let it go. Some of us may want to stay in our Shavasana for 5 minutes. Some of us may want to stay here for even half an hour. So I will leave it with you, and I would like to say thank you so much for joining today's practice. Yin can be practiced any time of the day. If you find you have trouble sleeping, you might even want to do this before going to bed. You know, it's no right or wrong. And it's been wonderful to be able to guide you through today's practice. Enjoy your Shavasana, and I hope I'll see you very soon again. Namaste. Thank you.